Happy Tuesday, Miami Dolphins fans. Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Nic Rohloff. We are getting dangerously close to NFL draft time, and we are here to break down the latest rumors surrounding the Miami Dolphins and the NFL draft. Mel Kiper Jr. released his final mock draft 2 weeks before. That's kind of ridiculous that his final one is today, but we'll break down the two selections he had for the Dolphins. I have my own 7-round mock draft that features a blockbuster trade. We'll also discuss some NFL free agency rumors surrounding the Dolphins. Dalton Risner, an offensive lineman linked to the Fins, as well as a free agency plan revealed. We'll have it here and more on today's show. But as always, as we welcome people into the live show on this Tuesday afternoon, shout out your city for me down in the comments section. Where are the people watching from? Some shout-outs here for Charles, Yes, LeBron, Slushy, Terry, Hot Dog, all in the building. Tori as well. Barry Jefferson saying, what's up? What's up, Barry? Damon saying, let's get the likes up. I agree. Slushy's in Sarasota. Hot Dogs in Lockport, New York. I could only assume. I see California, Florida, Columbus, Ohio, Orlando, Florida, Lynchburg, Virginia. Shout out to all the real ones coming here on this Tuesday afternoon with everything that we have in store. It's going to be a fun live show here today. We got Macomb, Illinois from Timothy. Shout out to you, Timothy. Tagovailoa 14 says hi. What's up, Tagovailoa 14? EMTs watching from Dallas. Hey, that's where we're at. We're in Dallas, Texas, here at the Chat Sports headquarters, if you will. Elwood is in Guinea, Virginia. Matthews in West Palm Beach. Charles is in Beaver Dam, Kentucky. New Jersey in the building as well. New Jersey in the building. Listen, a lot of people have thoughts on Tyreek Hill. Listen, it's an intriguing possibility to trade him. I'll say that. It's not going to happen because, to me, when you look at what the Dolphins have on the roster, what it would cost them and do to their books, their cap number, if they traded him, it is just not likely that a Tyreek Hill trade ultimately comes to fruition. Now, you could say something different at the trade deadline in October during the season, but during this offseason, it feels very unlikely that Tyreek Hill gets traded. So I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I don't see it as something that's going to possibly happen. Appreciate everybody tuning in here. Now it's time to get your opinions on the show. Who is your mid-round NFL draft sleeper? I want you to call your shot. It doesn't matter the position. I just want you to think of a prospect that when you've done some mock draft simulators, you've heard me talk about multiple and a million different prospects that the Dolphins could draft on day 2, late day 3, early day 3. Who is your mid-round draft sleeper? I've got a couple names that I consistently bring up. I think one of them is Pat Bryant, the wide receiver from Illinois. I'm a big fan of his game. I'd love to see him in a Dolphins uniform if Miami goes the tight end route, or wide receiver route in the middle rounds. I think someone that we're going to talk about a little bit later, North Carolina cornerback Elijah Huzzie, is an intriguing player that I like. So let me know your mid-round sleeper. Let me know. Yes, I agree, says David Walker from Central Arkansas. Slushy says the O-lineman from BYU. Is that the guy that you're referring to that the Dolphins had a meeting with at the Big 12 Pro Day? Not sure if it is. Timothy says Tyler Booker. Can't say that's a mid-round draft sleeper. He's going inside the top likely. And let's just say he's going to go likely inside the top 50. That's not a sleeper. Not a sleeper. Alward says Charles Grant, the offensive lineman from William and Mary. I could understand that one. I could see that one. Ooh, this is a good one from Yes, I Agree. Luke Leachy, or Leachy, I forget how you say it, but the tight end from Iowa. It's funny you mention him. Yes, I agree. He may or may not be mentioned throughout our live show today. Slushy saying Desmond Watson, that big fella from Florida. Yeah. I know the Dolphins fans really like him. I know they do. They want the beefy, athletic guy from the Gators. Tagovailoa 14 says Tyler Warren. Not a sleeper, but I could understand why a lot of Dolphins fans may like him as a prospect. All right, we're going to continue to talk about some NFL draft rumors here. But I do got to give a shout-out to the ticketing partner of Dolphins today. That is Game Time. I use Game Time every time I go purchase my tickets, whether it's a sporting event, comedy show, concert, it doesn't matter. And with the summer almost here, when I go watch an MLB game, I will make sure I use Game Time to get my tickets. They have last-minute deals, which help save you up to 60% off to buying last-minute tickets. They also have Game Time Picks, a feature that makes last-minute ticket buying easier. They quickly highlight the best deals in the stadium. All-in pricing, toggle that, shows you the total price of your ticket up front with no surprise fees at checkouts. There's events in my local area of Dallas that I want to go to, like a Rangers game, a Mavericks game. But if you are in Miami or in your local area, take advantage. You go to concerts or sporting events. With concerts, you got some big names coming to town. Lady Gaga coming during the summer. Chris Brown's coming in July as well. So get started with Game Time. Download the app and use code ChatSports when creating an account to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I appreciate Game Time for sponsoring today's live show. Now I have another question for the Dolphins fans here. Should the Dolphins trade down in the NFL Draft, whether it's from their first-round pick at number 13, whether it's one of their picks in the second or third round at 48 or 98, should Miami trade back in order to acquire more draft capital to address positions? Right now, Miami has 10 picks in the NFL Draft. They have one in round 1, one in round 2, one in round 3, 2 in round 4, 2 in round 5, and then 3 in round 7, none in round 6. Should they trade down? Say someone came calling in the first round for Miami to move back 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 spots, and they offered you a couple draft picks in the second round and then a fourth rounder or something as well. And would you do it? It's a serious question. I'm intrigued. Yes, I agree. Says depends on who's on the board. Lean towards yes generally, though. I agree, and I have a specific idea and take on this matter in terms of when I would be willing to trade down, if I would be willing to. If the corner from Michigan, Will Johnson, is on the board at 13, I am going to have a hard time trading down and passing up on him, if I'm going to be honest. But, hey, say a Shedeur Sanders slides to 13 and a team wants to come up and draft them, I'd seriously think about trading down. I'd seriously have to. How could you not? Cliff is saying trade up for Cam Ward or bust. It's just not going to happen. So I think this is the same person that's in the live or in our comment section. I'm not going to lie, every single video saying trade up for Cam Ward or nothing matters. It's just not going to happen, man. I can't tell if the person is a little bit off or I don't know. I don't know, man. Charles saying definitely should trade down. Alwood, that's good. That's good, man. That's funny stuff. That is funny stuff. Breaking news, I hear Tua is training with Liam Eichenberg to learn how to fall down properly. That's good. That's good. That's a good one. I can't lie. We got 61 people watching. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up icon. Let's get to 30 likes. Let's get to 30 likes, and then we can start today's show. We have a loaded show. We got 4 segments. We got a lot to talk about when it comes to the NFL Draft. If we get to 30 likes, we'll start the show. We need 5 more. That's at least 50%. Come on. Help a man out. Hit that like button. We need 30 likes. We need 30 likes. We need to get 5. We need 5. Now we need 4. We have a loaded show. We do, because we have a Mel Kiper 2-round NFL mock draft where we have the Dolphins making 2 selections. We'll look at the 2 of them. Signed Dalton Risner, the free agent offensive lineman. Is he someone that Miami has on their radar? Plus, Chris Grier, is his free agency plan revealed when it comes to before the NFL Draft? And then we also have a new Miami Dolphins mock draft, full 7 rounds, that will feature a blockbuster trade. So a fun mock draft to go over on today's show. But before we do that, we do have to show our super chat we just got from Jonathan Soto. Shout out to Jonathan. We also crossed 30 likes, so after we look at Jonathan's super chat, we will then get into our first segment. So appreciate everyone who's hit that thumbs up icon, but appreciate Jonathan Soto with the $5 super chat here. If you look at Chris Grier's past as far as trading up or trading down, other than Jalen Waddle, his history of doing so isn't good. 2022 draft, LOL. Yeah, listen, I know that history is history for a reason, but I think he has done a good job drafting. I do. We went over this on a live show in the past, but when you go through the draft picks that Chris Grier has made, at least in the first round, he has done a pretty good job of hitting, right? He's obviously had some misses, Charles Harris being one of them. Noah Ego. I was going to call him Ego because I always botch the name. He was obviously a bad first-round pick, but you have Christian Wilkins, big-time hit. Minkah Fitzpatrick, big-time hit. Jalen Phillips is a hit. Jalen Waddle's a hit. For whether you like the guy or not, Tua has been a productive quarterback inside the top 10, and he is a Pro Bowl quarterback. So I would call that a hit. Austin Jackson, I would say, was a good pick as well late in the first round. Plus, you just look at the one from spacing on the player that I was going to highlight. I don't know. Did I say Chop Robinson? No, that's the player then. I spaced on the player. Chop Robinson was a great pick. So I think when you think about first-round picks, Chris Grier has done a good job. You get into the second and third round, it gets a lot more dicey. But I do think for the most part, he has done a good job in the first round since he's taken over as Dolphins GM. It's just all about the free agent signings and the day 2 picks. He hasn't done a good job there. Missed on Cam Smith. Obviously hit on Javon Holland. So, yeah. Liam Eichenberg, we know about that. But either way, I think he's done an okay job for the first round of the NFL draft. I appreciate you, Jonathan Soto. If anyone else wants to get their comments, thoughts on screen, or ask me a question, Super Chat is the best way to do that. Shout out to Jonathan Soto for leading the way and getting that going. We're now going to get into our first segment on today's live show. That is a Mel Kiper 2-round NFL mock draft. Let's take a look at who he has the Dolphins drafting at picks 13 and 48 here right now. Welcome to the Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff. On today's show, we are taking a look at Mel Kiper's mock draft. He did his final mock draft, which I don't know why his mock draft that is final is 2 weeks before the actual thing, but it is what it is. Kind of a fraud alert if you're asking me. We'll see who Miami selected at pick 13 and pick 48. And spoiler alert, I really like the pick for the Dolphins in the second round at 48. I think it's a steal. We'll get to that in just a bit. But make sure you do subscribe to the channel because you wouldn't be able to see this 2-round mock draft for Miami through Mel Kiper if you didn't purchase ESPN Plus. It's $120 a year. Here at Dolphins Today, we put out daily content, sometimes 2 videos a day, and guess what? $0 a year. So hit that sub button if you want the latest Miami Dolphins content through the draft, free agency, and everything in between. All right, I wanted to go through who Kiper had going ahead of Miami, at least for the first round before we talk about the 13th pick. Some players that Miami would like to have in terms of Will Campbell and Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. They're not going to have them. They go in the top 4. Then at 5 through 8 here, another player that the Dolphins would like to have slip to them potentially at 13, in Armon Membu. He went ahead at pick number 7. But then this is the one where it gets interesting. The 4 selections before the Dolphins got on the clock at number 13. Shedeur Sanders is off the board at 9, so no potential trade down. Tyler Warren off the board. My number 1 guy, Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, off the board, but a second running back does go in Amarian Hampton. So with the 13th pick in this Mel Kiper mock draft, the Dolphins are selecting Texas defensive back Jahdae Barron, a player that we have talked about at nauseum here on the channel about being an option for the Dolphins at pick number 13. And if you've seen our content in the past, whether it's been a mock draft from me or just talking about Dolphins draft targets, I love Jahdae Barron. I would be a big fan if this was ultimately the actual selection made by Chris Grier and company on April 24th. Now, do I prefer Will Johnson more than Jahdae Barron? Yes, I do. But I do think Barron is a really good fallback option due to his versatility, which we'll get to here in just a second. But I did want to share what Mel Kiper said on this selection. Kiper that said that the Texas offensive lineman Kelvin Banks Jr. could fit, but Miami also drafted Patrick Paul late in the second round last April, and he has spent a year learning behind Armstead. The Dolphins could start Paul and use this pick to clean up the CB2 spot opposite of Jalen Ramsey, where either Storm Duck, Cam Smith, or Ethan Bonner is currently slated to start, which would be a disaster in my opinion. Barron would jump to the front of the line. His ball skills, with 5 interceptions coming last season, speed and versatility would boost the unit. And boy, I do not disagree with that line of thinking from Mel Kiper. But before we talk about Barron more in depth as a prospect and his fit in this Dolphins secondary, let me know. Let's just fast forward 2 weeks. If the Dolphins at pick number 13, Roger Goodell went up to the podium and said Jahdae Barron for Texas, what would your one-word reaction be to that selection? Pin comment, get down in the comment section and let me know. My one word for Jahdae Barron, versatility. And I talk a lot about versatility on this channel because I just value it so much. And Barron, I think he values it quite a bit because that's all he's done his entire career. Some NFL scouts believe Barron might actually be switched to safety at the next level due to his fluid hips, his good sideline-to-sideline speed, and his undersized frame for the cornerback position. But when he played at the Texas Longhorns program, he played all over the place. And I wanted to showcase his career alignment for Texas's defense. He played outside corner most of the time, 1,112 snaps, with most of those snaps coming this past season on the boundary. But he also did a lot in the slot for them, playing 900 snaps there. He lined up in the box as well quite a bit at 495 snaps, and he had very limited reps at free safety 51, but people believe that he could make that transition. We've often compared him almost to Jalen Ramsey, not in terms of his physical profile and his outside ability, but if you go back before Ramsey was traded to the Dolphins when he was playing for the Los Angeles Rams, he played that star, that type of versatile Swiss Army knife defensive back moving all over the place. That's kind of what Barron did before 2024 for the Texas Longhorns. And you see his speed, like he is perfect at that spot. 5'10 and change, which is why he's a little bit undersized, which is what the RAS will tell you. But the speed is what makes up for it. A 4.39 40-yard dash ranks very, very good. So he has the ability to move on quickly from sideline to sideline and make big-time plays. And we've talked a lot about Barron, so I'm not going to stay with him quite a bit here. But Barron, yes, although he is a little undersized, he is very rangy, he's fluid, and he's someone that has a knack for taking the ball away. And I know some people might look at corners and be like, well, I'd rather have them just play lockdown coverage and not even be targeted than be a guy who takes the ball away but gives up a lot of touchdowns. I get that line of thinking. To me, I am not so I'm indifferent, let's just say. I am fine with either type of cornerback play. But Barron does know how to take the ball away. You heard Kiper mention it just a second ago. He had 5 interceptions last season, but he also had 16 PBUs. So he has good ball skills. He does not panic when the ball is in the air coming towards him. He knows what to do in those moments. And you look at his coverage stats from last year. He was locked down for that Texas defense, only allowing 279 yards, a less than 50% completion percentage, a QB rating of 33.1. I don't know how you look at this pick and be upset with it, especially because he could fill potentially multiple roles on your defense in terms of safety, outside corner. If Miami views him more as a safety, I'm cool with the pick. If they view him as an outside corner, I'm cool with the pick. I really like Jahdae Barron. And we'll wrap up my thoughts on Barron here in just a second. But I do want to shout out the ticketing partner of Dolphins today, and that is Game Time. Whether you want to go to an MLB game this summer, a concert, a comedy show, it does not matter. Get your tickets with Game Time today. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. There is a reason why it's the official ticketing partner here of Dolphins today. You can get a full panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you're sitting. No pole, no stanchion, no board will be in your way. Zone deals, save even more money when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. They also have the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take advantage if you're in the Miami area. Go to a concert this summer, whether it's Chris Brown in July, Lady Gaga later in the summer, or go to a Marlins game. Go to a Heat playoff game if they're lucky enough to make there. Take advantage of Game Time. use them and get your tickets. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and redeem code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, final word when it comes to the Jahdae Barron pick in the first round. I prefer Will Johnson. I have Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan, as my number one corner in this draft. Outside of Travis Hunter, it sounds like he might play a wide receiver. That's neither here nor there. But if you just take pure corners, I'm going Will Johnson over Jahdae Barron. But obviously, we showcased in this mock draft, he went number 11 to the San Francisco 49ers. So if he's off the board, I like Jahdae Barron at 13. I could also see a trade back, but Barron's ability to play at different positions in that secondary would make him very valuable for Anthony Weaver in this Dolphins defense. I would very much like if he was the selection for Miami if Johnson's off the board at pick number 13. All right, let's get over to pick number 48, the second round selection, the one that I teased being a steal for Miami. And Mel Kiper had them going with Toledo defensive lineman Darius Alexander. I am in love with this pick. I would borderline be willing to trade up early second round, late first round pick to get Alexander if he's still there. So in Kiper's mock, him falling to 48 would be a dream. Kiper on Alexander, saying he can play pretty much anywhere on the defensive line, bringing quickness and physicality. He had 101 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 27 run stops, 50 pressures, and 7.5 sacks over the past 2 seasons. That production would be welcome in the middle of the Miami defensive front. I'm all in, folks. Darius Alexander, if he's there in round 2, sign me up. Production would be very welcomed on this Dolphins defensive line, considering Miami has absolutely nothing right now. Zach Sealer is the only notable name on this Dolphins group. You brought back Benito Jones. Yeah, he was a fine nose tackle last season. I don't hate him in rotation, but you are missing a big-time second defensive lineman alongside Zach Sealer after Calais Campbell left in NFL free agency and signed a 1-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals. You just don't have enough in this room, and Alexander, to me, would be able to be a day one starter right away. He has a perfect blend of production, although it was at the MAC, but still, he was productive at the collegiate level, and he has great size and physicality, great speed. I mean, look at this. He's 6'3", 305. He put up a respectable bench number. He was explosive in terms of his vertical and broad jump, which tells you and tells me that he's able to get off the line of scrimmage at a very quick rate. And that speed, that quickness he showcased at the college level will translate to the NFL level. His 40-yard dash backs that up as well. Like, to me, you're just getting more and more in on Alexander here, and there's no way for you to not get excited. You blend that production with the RAS, the traits that he showcased at the NFL Combine, his pro day, and we're talking about a defensive lineman here in the second round that could start alongside Zach Sealer, but could also be the future of this defensive line room if you really believed he could get to that rate. And the part that's intriguing about Alexander to me is the fact that he can get it done both in the run game as well as rushing the passer. Looking at his pass rush grades last year and his advanced numbers, according to Pro Football Focus, out of the pass rushers that qualified for the snaps, he ranked 17th out of 175 interior defensive linemen in pass rush grade. He ranked 9th out of 175 in win percentage, winning 12.9% of his pass rush opportunities. And then he ranked top 10 in pressures and hurries, 4th in QB hurries, with 8 of them last year. So he got after the quarterback at an exceptionally high level. But then he backed that up with an even better performance, in my opinion, in the run game. So you have the best of both worlds here with Darius Alexander. He ranked 3rd out of 194 interior defensive linemen that qualified for run defense snaps with his grade of 90.3. Was 12th in terms of stops, had 23 total, and had a stop percentage against the run of 7.9, which was 25th out of 194 defensive linemen and defensive tackles. With defensive line on the interior being such a big need for Miami, you can make the argument that they should look to do it in round 1. But it is a deep defensive line class. Darius Alexander could slip a little bit because of how deep the class is. You've got other guys like Alfred Collins out of Texas, Deion Walker from Kentucky, TJ Sanders from South Carolina. But if Darius Alexander is on the board on early round 2, I would contemplate trading up. And if he was on the board at 48, assuming you didn't go defensive line in round 1, I would be absolutely pounding the table for Alexander in the second round of the NFL Draft. All right, so the Dolphins went with Jahdae Barron, the DB from Texas, at pick number 13, and then the defensive lineman from Toledo, Darius Alexander, at pick 48 in this Mel Kiper 2-round NFL mock draft. From the Dolphins' perspective, grade it for me down in the comment section, A, B, C, D, or F. I give it an A. I mean, if this is how it shook out 2 weeks from now, I would be jumping through the roof in the first 2 rounds. I really would. The 4 biggest needs for Miami, in no particular order, is defensive line, cornerback, offensive line, left guard specifically, and safety. Now, I could actually argue that is the correct order in terms of need for Miami as well, because they just have nothing on the defensive line. So to me, you get a day 1 starter in Darius Alexander that has great production at the college level as well as athleticism. You get a versatile defensive back that can play in different positions on your defense in a different scheme, has good ball skills, and Jahdae Barron as well to fill that CB2 role. You head into potentially round 3 and beyond looking for left guard, safety, and some other players best position available or best player available on offense. Yeah, I would be a massive fan of this turnout in the top 50. All right, and make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we will be live for the NFL Draft, breaking down every selection the Miami Dolphins make. We will also have you covered with every piece of Dolphins news and rumors leading up to the draft from now until April 24th, so join the channel right now. First segment down, and shout out to Frank O'Connor with the $10 super chat. Shout out to my guy Frank, always coming in with the heat. I think people won't like to hear this, but with all of our holes and losing Armstead, I think we should sell big time Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey, Tyreek Hill, all of our old big pay guys that could still get good payback. All right, Frank, so it's an intriguing hypothetical. Now, I will say this. It was always going to be Teron Armstead leaving. Like, the plan was always for Patrick Paul to be your starting left tackle in his second year of being in the NFL. That's why you made the pick in the second round last year when offensive tackle wasn't the biggest need at the time. Now, I will push back here a little bit because Bradley Chubb is not going to fetch you anything. He also lowered his contract hit to make him available for you this year, or he might have been a post-June 1st one cut. So Bradley Chubb did you a solid there to keep him on the roster. So you're not trading him. With Tyreek Hill, we've talked about it a lot. Yeah, he's a headache. Yeah, it might be the best thing to trade him, get a second-round pick potentially or an early third-round pick and cut bait. But his contract is so bad to where his cap hit would go up $1 million if you traded him before June 1st. There's just no incentive. So I don't think they trade Tyreek Hill. You could trade Jalen Ramsey, but I probably wouldn't because if you traded Jalen Ramsey, you would have absolutely no corners on this roster. You're also not getting a first-round pick back for him. It would probably be a third-round, fourth-round pick due to his contract and age. So to me, there's just no return worth making a trade with any of those 3 guys. It doesn't help you financially. It doesn't really help you with netting good top draft picks. So to me, Frank, I appreciate the $10 super chat, but I think it's just not smart to trade the 3 of them or any of them really now. If we are a bad football team in the first 2 months of the year and you want to trade a couple of them before the NFL trade deadline, yeah, I could be bought in on that, but doing it right now, not so much. All right, I want to get back to this question. Grade Mel Kiper's 2-round Dolphins mock draft. I graded it as an A. I felt very good about it. I'd be very excited. I see Hitter saying B, Elwood C. Yes, I agree, C. So I'm a little bit higher on that mock draft than you guys are. Justin, what are your thoughts on that Dolphins mock draft? No, I don't think you are. I think you might have the you might have plugged in the wrong one, or no? I don't know. Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't look like you're hooked on here potentially, but not sure why. But yeah, let me know your mock draft. But you could quickly tell me. No. Yeah, Justin likes the mock draft. Elwood says, I think both too early. What makes you think? I mean, you can make the. I don't actually think you can make that argument Because I've seen Jahdae Barron go in mock drafts from Daniel Jeremiah, an NFL Network insider, him go to the 49ers at 11. I think 11 to like 17 is the range for Jahdae Barron. Now, if he fell to the early 20s, it wouldn't shock me, but I think 11 to 17 is the range for him. And then when it comes to Darius Alexander, I've seen him go in the late first round, but most of the time he is 1,000% off the board at 48. So I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case. Say Barron's bad in zone coverage. I don't agree with that either. Okay. Oh, yeah, that was the worst game of all time. Texas, Colorado State. Ugh, ugh, ugh. Double S says I always give Kiper mocks a C plus. I guess I don't know why. Just guess you don't like Mel Kiper. Listen, I get it. You might not be your cup of tea, but he does this for a living. Even though I think it's fraudulent, he's not going to do another mock draft in the next 2 weeks. But when he has your team taking a player this close to the NFL draft, that means what he's hearing. And I'll say this, folks. I will say this, and I think this is very interesting. Field Yates of ESPN dropped a 2-round NFL mock draft last week. He had the Dolphins taking Will Johnson at 13. Now, ESPN's Mel Kiper has the Dolphins taking Jahdae Barron at 13. I know they don't have sources inside the building, but when 2 ESPN NFL draft experts has the Dolphins taking a corner at pick 13, I think you should start to find the expectation that it's likely going to be a defensive back at number 13. Or let's just say not likely, but just say more likely than not. I think if you had to rank what position I think it's most likely going to be for the Dolphins at pick 13, I would go, if you had to do it, I'd go 60% defensive back. I think you can include safety in that. So 60% defensive back, 25% 25% defensive line, and then 15% offensive line. That's where I think it goes. I think it's what it does. And the reason why I think it's such a difference is that I know offensive line, people aren't going to be happy at me thinking it's 15%. The reason why I think it's that is because there's no offensive lineman worth taking at 13 there. If Will Campbell and Armand Membu are off the board, I don't think Kelvin Banks is worth the 23rd or the 13th pick anymore. Not with how this draft board and pre-draft processes happened and shaken out. Gray Zabel's too early to take a guard. Like, the Dolphins are set on every position besides guard. And I just don't think guards are worth taking at 13th overall unless they are like a Quentin Nelson can't-miss prospect. And I don't find any of these guys as a can't-miss prospect. If Will Campbell was there at 13, he slipped through the cracks, absolutely taking him. But I don't think he will. So to me, I think it's very much likely I'd be willing to put the house on it being a defensive back or defensive lineman with the 13th pick, with me leaning defensive back, because I also think it would be a reach on any of these defensive linemen. You can talk me into Kenneth Grant at 13, but even then I think it could be a reach. Because in that Mel Kiper mock draft, by the way, Kenneth Grant went in the 30s. Went 39, I think, to the Bears in that mock draft. No, he actually went to the Niners, I believe, at 40-3. Now, so excuse me on that. So, I mean, wide range for these prospects. So I think it's going to be one of Barron. I would still be happy with Malachi Starks, but either way, that's kind of where I think things might be leaning here for the Dolphins. All right, we'll get into our next segment here. This revolves free agency and an offensive lineman that may have been linked to the Miami Dolphins. Let's get into it. Dalton Risner, one of the top offensive lineman free agents still out there, linked to the Miami Dolphins. I'm Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. Could Miami go out and sign the veteran offensive guard to plug in at that left guard vacancy? We're going to talk about that on today's show. But the reason why we're even making this episode of Dolphins Today is because he was linked to the Dolphins. Not by an NFL draft expert, not by an NFL insider, No, actually by his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, who obviously has a very strong relationship and tie to this Dolphins front office as he represents multiple members of the Dolphins, including, and most importantly, Tyreek Hill. But he said on his weekly segment with the local TV station in Miami, saying that he mentioned Dalton Risner when asked about the Dolphins' offensive line and if they could go out and sign another offensive lineman. There is a connection also because the Dolphins' offensive line coach, Butch Barry, coached him when Risner came out of college. Kansas State Wildcat was part of the Denver Broncos organization. So there is an intriguing process here of Rosenhaus having good ties and a previous pairing with Barry and Risner. And before we talk about Risner as a player and if I would sign him, help us out. Spread the word here of Dolphins Today. Share this video to a friend, family member, or to social media. We're trying to grow our channel to become the largest Dolphins YouTube channel out there and the best channel we can be and reach more Dolphins fans, make this a larger community. So help us out. Share us down in the social media or to a friend or family member. All right, when it comes to Dalton Risner, I am pretty intrigued. And when I say pretty intrigued, it's more or less slightly like, listen, this is a late signing in free agency. So this isn't someone who's going to come in and be an absolute game changer. It would be a one-year deal. But I could see Risner being a good fit for this Miami Dolphins football team. And when you think of the top offensive linemen available on the interior, because that's what we're looking at here. We have 4 out of 5 starting spots filled on this offensive line. Like, we only need to really get a true left guard. I don't trust Liam Eichenberg, and boy, would I be furious if he was a starter this upcoming season. And Larry Borum is your swing tackle, replacing Kendall Lamb. So Risner, Will Hernandez, Brandon Scherf, Shaq Mason, and Daniel Brunskill are, to me, the top 5 targets for the Dolphins on the interior offensive line. And as I mentioned with this depth chart, you have 4 out of 5 spots filled. You have your center to right filled in nicely with Austin Jackson, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer. With Teron Armstead officially announcing his retirement this past weekend, you could take him as off this depth chart, and it's going to be Patrick Paul starting week 1, assuming no injury, the second-round pick from last year's draft out of Houston. You just need to fill that left guard spot. I don't want Eichenberg. I don't want any of these other guys who are on little contracts. So to me, if you can sign a veteran interior offensive lineman to start at left guard, you can then go into the NFL draft and go best player available, where you could still take a Will Campbell if you wanted to, if he slipped to 13 and that's the best player available. But you can also just go best player available in the secondary because that's a big need on the defensive line and not be so bogged down of, hey, we need an interior offensive lineman in the draft in the first 3 picks that you have at 13, 48, and 98. So to me, signing a veteran free agent, whether it's a Brandon Scherf or a Dalton Risner, who we're going to talk more about here in a second, is probably the best way to go about the remaining parts of this offseason if you were the Miami Dolphins. And before we get into Dalton Risner, I want to know your thoughts. Which position on this Dolphins roster concerns you the most right now? Is it the defensive line? Is it the offensive line? Is it the safety room, cornerback room? Get down in the comment section and let me know which position group scares you the most. I know we're talking about the offensive line right now, but I do want to mention, to answer that question, the defensive line is actually my largest concern. And you guys all know if you watched our content. If not, make sure you are subscribed because you would have known this about a month ago. But I said that the number 1 need for the Dolphins this offseason was the interior offensive line. But now with how free agency has shaken out, well, there is no good defensive lineman free agents available. So why would I go that route? Like, you need to fill the offensive line. And Dalton Risner is an intriguing option for the Miami Dolphins. Someone who was a second-round pick in the NFL draft before, has had success in the league, has been bounced around. Now, he didn't play a lot last season, but his grades do check out relatively nicely here. Having a solid overall PFF grade. A better pass blocker than run blocker, there's no doubt about that. And you see that with some of his statistics. Only 1 sack allowed, that's pretty nice. Only 2 QB hits, yeah, that's pretty nice. Only 18 hurries, yeah, that's pretty solid for the amount of snaps he played. And then a really fun number to showcase as well is the fact that he has absolutely 0 penalties in his 611 snaps last season. So Risner becomes an intriguing option for the Dolphins. And you might be wondering, well, if he was so good, why is he still out there in free agency? We'll get to that in just a second. But I wanted to showcase some of those numbers. When I looked at offensive linemen last year and filtered the snaps played, because he only played 600 snaps, so I took 600 snaps or more last season. I used him as the baseline. There were 60 offensive linemen, all interior, by the way, only guards, that played 600 snaps or more last year. Well, Risner ranked number 1 in penalties because he was the only player that didn't have a penalty that played 600 or more snaps, 3rd in sacks allowed, 9th in QB hits, and 14th in pressures allowed. Like, it's obvious here when you look at Dalton Risner that he is a very good pass blocker. And when we talk about the offensive line with Miami, a lot of the conversation has circled the inability to run in between the tackles, be physical at the point of attack inside the red zone or not. But there is also a lot of concern about protecting Tua Tagovailoa. And Risner, if you slotted him in at that left guard spot and he was able to stay healthy and be that mate next to Patrick Paul in between Aaron Brewer, well, you would have a solid left guard in terms of pass protection. Now, run blocking and being able to stay healthy is the question, which we'll get to in just a second. But we are sponsored on today's show by Prize Picks, the daily fantasy sports app and platform that I play on a daily basis. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash right now. And college basketball is over, but professional basketball is getting closer to their postseason. You also have hockey playoffs coming soon. There's esports, there's golf, there's so many different sports you can combine and cash out. PrizePicks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. Double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And with the basketball playoffs approaching, you can either do that or go to the big-time event in Augusta this upcoming weekend where I am taking a look. I love golf, and here are my picks for the first round of the Masters. Less than Rory McIlroy. That's a good thing. Rare time you want to go less than to be positive in here in the golf world. Less than Rory McIlroy, 70.5 strokes. Less than Scottie Scheffler, 70 strokes. And I'll go more than Phil Mickelson, 73 strokes. 3-player entry for the first round of the Masters at Augusta this Thursday. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Links in the description and comments of today's video. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, getting back to Dalton Risner as a free agent target, there is a concern when it comes to his run blocking. You saw the PFF grades earlier. We're going to look at some stats here, but it's clear that he is a better pass blocker than a run blocker. So we looked at the offensive lineman that qualified for his pass blocking ranks. Well, we did the same thing for run blocking, and you actually added a little bit more players here. So there's 64 offensive linemen that qualified for the run blocking statistics. He did not rank so kindly. He ranked in the top 10, top 20 in the pass blocking. Yeah, he ranked in the bottom third here in terms of his run blocking ability. 43rd, 41st, and 56th. You obviously see he is a little bit of a better zone grade run blocker, at least last season, in terms of if he fits in the Dolphins system, which Miami does run a zone scheme with Mike McDaniel. So that is a little bit of a concern, but at least it's better, and that fits him more than maybe a gap run scheme. Now, you might be wondering, what is the major concern with Risner? Well, obviously it's the run blocking, but it's also his inability to stay healthy. I synced up with Patrick Seatman, who is the host of Vikings Now here at Chat Sports, and I asked him, what's the deal with Risner? Because the PFF numbers aren't atrocious, and it surprises me he's not signed at least by one team out there in free agency. Well, Seat said he had a lower back issue the past couple of seasons in Minnesota, is good in pass protection. But he does struggle in the run game, especially when he gets lined up against bigger defensive linemen. He used more colorful language than got his butt handed to him. But you get the point. He is a little bit of a finesse blocker, so where if he gets met with big physicality, he struggles and is not as good in the run game. Final thoughts coming up on Risner here in just a second, but I'll say this. If the Dolphins do make a signing, whether it's after the NFL Draft or prior to April 24th, 2025 NFL Draft, we will have you covered with a video. So join the channel today, hit that sub button because we're also bringing you daily content. All right, I will say on this point with Dalton Risner, despite the injury questions, despite the issues with the run blocking, there is still no debate, in my opinion, that he is an upgrade and a major upgrade on the interior offensive line from last season. Like, if your left guard and right guard starting combo week one was Dalton Risner at left guard, James Daniels at right guard, I would feel infinitely better than watching Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones last year. Like, no offense to those two, but these two would be just way better. And I know a lot of people might say, well, Risner played a lot of right guard at Minnesota. Would you trust him to play left guard? I would. Or I would feel comfortable moving James Daniels to left guard and having Risner at right guard. Either way, the two of them would be a massive upgrade over Eichenberg and the Robert Jones combination last year. And I think your offensive line as a whole would probably be better than last year. Yeah, you lose Teron Armstead, who was elite last year, in favor of Patrick Paul, but left guard through right tackle would be the same or upgraded, which is why it would make me very, very excited. And I do want to say this, though. Even though I would take Dalton Risner in a heartbeat, I still think if you look towards the free agent market, when we showcase the top 5 interior offensive linemen still available right now, I would probably list him third on my list of targets. I would rather sign Brandon Scherff, and I would rather sign Will Hernandez. Brandon Scherff is ultimately my number one target in NFL free agency. Take away positions, whether it's safety, corner, offensive line, defensive line. Like, I would rather sign Scherff out of anyone because his stability he would bring to the left guard spot is just second to none. A player that is better in pass protection than run blocking, kind of like Dalton Risner. But the reason why I like Scherff so much is that stability he would bring to the offensive line. And he simply just doesn't miss games. You saw he played over 1,000 snaps last season. He has not missed a game over the last 3 years. That has been a major concern. It's been an issue for Miami consistently at almost every offensive guard spot or offensive line spot. They just can't stay healthy. Scherff is someone that stays on the football field. And the stability he would bring, pairing him up next to a quote-unquote first-year starter in Patrick Paul, that'd make me very happy. And it would make me feel more comfortable with this offensive line going into the NFL draft and the NFL season. So I know we talked mostly about Dalton Risner on this episode, but if you had to sign one interior offensive lineman in free agency to start at left guard, who would it be? Would it be Brandon Scherff or would it be Dalton Risner? Type DR for Risner, type BS for Scherff. Let me know down in the comment section. All right, I did want to mention this when it comes to the free agency period of this offseason. The reality of the situation is this. The Dolphins are likely not going to sign anyone until after the NFL draft. You might ask why. Well, after the NFL draft is when comp formula stops getting equated, right? So they focus on players gained, players lost in NFL free agency. Well, after the NFL draft, those players you sign no longer count towards that formula. So what you see is the week after the NFL draft is almost another wave of free agency where these guys still out there will take visits, quickly sign with teams that teams want to get them, but it won't affect the comp formula. So I do think the Dolphins might be waiting on a guard, whether it be one of the 3 players we talked about, until after that. Plus, I think they want to see how the draft shakes out. Because if they like an offensive lineman that is there at 13 or 48, well, maybe they'll draft there and then they'll sign a veteran corner. So that's kind of where the reality of the situation is. I like Risner, I like Scherff, but I do anticipate Miami waiting until after the NFL draft to make any more signings to the roster. And as I mentioned, when the Dolphins do make signings, we will have you covered with videos. We'll also be live for the NFL draft as well. So subscribe, join the channel, and stay locked in for the top Dolphins coverage on YouTube. All right, second segment down. Who would you rather have, Risner or Scherff? Elwood's saying Brandon Scherff. I'm a Scherff guy when it comes to the two. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. Tyson going Scherff. Roberts going Scherff as well. Seems like most of the people are on us. It depends on price, but Scherf, I will say Scherf would likely be more expensive. I think he would get a 1 year, $6-7 million deal, maybe even $8 million deal potentially. Risner would likely be like 1 for 4, 1 for 5. So, but my thing is like when you're signing 1 year offensive guards to that price point, does it matter if it's 5 or 8 million? And would you rather spend the $3 million more on an offensive lineman who hasn't missed a game in 3 years? Like I'd probably try to get that. I'd probably rather get the guy that is consistently on the football field because, as Justin said in my ear, you get more bang for your buck that way. This is a great question from Tyson. Who plays worse for their respective teams? Liam Eichenberg or Terry Rozier? And if you're not a Heat fan, you might not know how bad Terry Rozier was for the Heat this season. Shoot. That's a tough question. I'm going to lean Liam Eichenberg. I lean Liam Eichenberg. Because Rozier was good last year. I don't think Liam's ever been good at all. So, yeah. It's just, I know it's tough that the Heat ended up trading a first-round pick for Eichenberg. Or, excuse me, Terry Rozier. So, I get it. I do get it. Ooh, Mets up 6-2 on the Marlins. Aren't you guys Marlins fans? I feel bad if you are. I'm a Mets fan, so Mets going for their 6th straight win. Started out the year a little rough, 2-3, but got 5 in a row, looking for 6, up 6-2. All right, time to get into our 3rd out of 4 segments here. We're going to talk about the plan being revealed. And I might have just alluded to it at the end of the last show about what the free agency plan for the Miami Dolphins is going forward. But I wanted to do a full segment on that and what I think the Dolphins should do or will do. So, time to break down what the free agency plan for the Dolphins the rest of the offseason might ultimately be. Did the Miami Dolphins free agency plan get revealed? Now, obviously, the main wave of free agency has come and gone. But as we get into that late free agency wave, before and after the NFL draft, the Dolphins clearly need to add more talent to this group with holes on different positions. How will they do it? I think it's been slightly spoiled for us. But when you look at the positions of need here, it's clear what the top 4 are. Defensive line, you weren't able to bring back Calais Campbell. Major bummer. That gives you probably the biggest need. You need to fill that left guard spot because the guy next to that position there, Liam Eichenberg, can't be your starter in week 1, or this season might as well just be a lost cause. You also need a boundary cornerback opposite of Jalen Ramsey, and I think you need to add another safety. I like Ifeatu Melifonwu. I like Ashton Davis. I like potentially Patrick Morris as a year 2 guy. You got Elijah Campbell there as well, but you need to add a legit guy to work in a tandem with Melifonwu or Ashton Davis. But I do not think any more signings are going to happen over the next 2 weeks. Now, maybe that is a wrong line of thinking, and maybe that changes. But Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald speculated in an article that the Dolphins will not sign anyone before the NFL draft. And he labeled a couple reasons why, but it does make sense to a degree why Miami might hold still in terms of signing players at this current juncture with only a couple weeks to go until the NFL draft. We'll talk about those 3 reasons in a second. But make sure you are following me over on Twitter /X at Nic_Rohloff is my handle. I have Dolphins news, rumors, and more over there. If anything happens with Miami in terms of breaking news, I'll have you covered on my Twitter before we make a video. On the road to 1,700 followers, 73 away. Help your boy out. Go give me a follow. All right, there's multiple reasons that were listed out, and it makes sense for the Dolphins and Chris Grier to not make any more signings before April 24th draft is, one, it doesn't, in terms of if you wait till after the draft, Monday at, noon Eastern time, 1 Eastern time, whatever it is on that Monday after the draft, it doesn't affect the comp pick formula. So when you get picks for the future, like the Dolphins got multiple comp picks this year, it takes into effect of who you lost, who you signed in free agency. but it's only taking place of who you lost and who you got after the year league opened until the NFL draft. So after the draft, any player you sign doesn't affect that formula. Also, if you don't sign anyone, it keeps you flexible in the NFL draft financially, but as well as maybe just saying, all right, we have 4 positions to fill. We'll just leave those spots open and take best player available in our first 4 to 5 picks, in the first top 100 picks for those positions. So it keeps you flexible. But it also waiting out the free agency market where you might be able to get some of these free agents on a cheaper contract than what you would have expected because their market didn't heat up as much as they thought. So I get there are reasons here for the Dolphins to wait. Now, with that being said, I do think it would benefit Miami if they signed an offensive lineman before the NFL draft. And I do get it. Keep it open because what if Campbell or Amon Mambu falls you at 13? Well, then you have to take one of them. And you'd be kicking yourself if you signed a veteran free agent offensive lineman and didn't take one of those top guys I just mentioned in the draft because, we had those positions filled in free agency. I get it. But you have so many holes on defense, you could just go best defensive player available, whether it's in the secondary or on the defensive line in the first round and at pick number 48. And there are some relatively solid, starting capable offensive linemen still out there. We talked about Brandon Scherf. We've talked about Dalton Risner. But Will Hernandez, Shaq Mason, Daniel Brunskill, I think is a good fit in the Dolphins' zone run blocking scheme as he's a versatile interior guy that can play as a center or an offensive guard. And I think would be a slight upgrade over Eichenberg. But Mason, Risner, Hernandez, and Scherf are all veteran options that would likely be able to start right away and give you a peace of mind and stability at that left guard spot. So before I talk about a couple of these guys individually, which offensive lineman do you want the Dolphins to sign? If Miami were to go sign an offensive lineman, who would it be? Out of those 5 guys, I think those are clearly the best ones. Drop yours down below in the comment section. I talked about this on a video yesterday, but I will continue to say and pound the table, if Miami is signing one of those free agents that we just showed on screen, I am praying, I am begging, I am hoping it is the veteran from Jacksonville, Brandon Scherf. He just would give me such a nice peace of mind on the offensive line. He really, really would. The veteran is a solid pass blocker, didn't allow a sack last season. Yeah, you have questions about him in the run game and his fit in a Mike McDaniel zone run block system, but the fact that he just plays football on a consistent basis is almost good enough for me, especially when I already know that he does not give up a lot of sacks. He doesn't get penalized often, and the thing is, and I will continue to use this word, it feels like it's the word of the day for me, stability. The Dolphins need that on the offensive line. It's one of the things that I am craving because you've seen so much turnover, so much injury issues on the offensive line, whether it's Isaiah Wynn, whether it's Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, Teron Armstead, Austin Jackson. It would be nice to have an offensive lineman that you can almost count on being available every single week. And Scherf would slide right into that left guard spot next to Patrick Paul, who's now your left tackle since Teron Armstead officially retired last weekend. And it would fit perfectly next to him and Aaron Brewer. Because although I'm bullish on Patrick Paul, I think he's going to be good. And his 1 year sitting behind Armstead, I think is going to benefit him in the long haul. The concern of him being a first-year starter at that left tackle position is there. And if you were to fill that left guard spot with a rookie, whether it's at pick 13 or 48, and your 2 starting left offensive linemen is a rookie and a first-year starter, that's a major concern. But you fill that spot with a veteran left guard, yeah, that makes me quite happy, especially someone of Brandon Scherf's history and notoriety. All right, we're going to shift over to secondary here in just a second. But I do got to give a shout-out to the ticketing partner of Dolphins today, and that is Game Time. Whenever I go to a live event, I get my tickets with Game Time. Why? Because they make it so easy with so many different great features. Whether I want to go to an MLB game here in Dallas or if I want to go to a concert, a theater event, Game Time is the best way to get those tickets. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and they have the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets this summer. They also have zone deals which saves you even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. Another feature is Game Time Picks. Makes last-minute ticket buying easier than ever. They highlight the best deals for you, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Whether you want to go see your local basketball team play or a local concert. Like, for example, if you're in Miami this summer, Chris Brown comes in late July. Lady Gaga comes later in the summertime as well. Take advantage of Game Time right now. Download the app, create an account, use code CHATSPORTS when signing up. That gets you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, another big position of need for the Miami Dolphins is corner. Like, they need in a corner opposite of Jalen Ramsey in a very bad way. And I know the Dolphins are likely going to be waiting to see how the draft unfolds, as they likely will target Will Johnson or maybe a Jahdae Barron at pick number 13 in the NFL Draft. But here's the thing. When you think about corners, there's some good ones out there. But the corner market feels absolutely dead because of not wanting to ruin that comp pick formula. Like, there's some glaring names still available that would likely be signed if adding them didn't affect that comp pick. Like, Asante Samuel Jr., I think will sign the Monday after the NFL Draft. I don't know who it's going to be with. It might be Tuesday, it might be Wednesday. But I'd be willing to bet the first 3 days after the draft, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Asante Samuel Jr. signs. Same thing I think could be said about Rasul Douglas. But these veterans would fit in nicely. Now, Kendall Fuller played well for the Dolphins last year, but they released him, obviously, before the free agency period opens. He's got injury concern. I don't know if he'd be willing to come back. I would take him back on a cheap one-year contract. I would say the same thing about Rasul Douglas, Stephon Gilmore, and Shaquille Griffin. But here's the truth of the matter when it comes to the cornerback position. And it's why I think Miami is ultimately waiting. I think the Dolphins and Chris Grier have a crush on a couple of these corners. Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron, the two I just mentioned. If either of them are on the board at pick number 13, I think Miami is going to go that route. I said it on our live show this Tuesday, which is why you subscribe and join us for that. But I would put it at a 60% chance Miami drafts a defensive back. I lumped in safety there, but I give it 60% chance Miami goes defensive back at 13, 25% defensive line, and 15% offensive line. That's kind of how I see it shaking out right now, because there's more talent at the top end of the cornerback market than there is in terms of some of these other positions of need. And you put in a young CB right next to Jalen Ramsey. They get to learn behind Jalen alongside him. You have a good CB duo on the outside of Ramsey and whoever that rookie is. And then when Ramsey's contract expires in 1 to 2 years, hopefully if you hit on that pick, whether it's Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron, if you do go with one of them, they're now your CB1 in this room of the future. It bridges the gap between a big need now and a need for the future as well, post Jalen Ramsey. It makes a lot of sense to go corner in round 1. And in a couple weeks, we are going to have every single Miami Dolphins draft pick on the channel. Miami currently slated to have 10 selections. We will break down every single pick live, and we will also break down every single pick with a full video, plus draft grades on each day and after the entire thing. UDFA tracker as well. Join the channel because we're the #1 spot for NFL draft content surrounding the Miami Dolphins. And I want to really pound this home before we move over to the safety department, because when you look at my big board, at least as things currently stand on April 8th on our Tuesday live show, Will Johnson's my #1 guy. He is. I want him bad. I think he would be awesome. And he's actually going to work out in front of NFL scouts and front offices before the draft because he wasn't able to do so at the pro day or the combine due to an injury. So we'll see if that takes him up boards or takes him down boards. But either way, he's my #1 guy right now. If Will Campbell slipped, he'd be my #2, but I don't anticipate him being there. I almost contemplate not even putting him on my big board. But Jahdae Barron's right there behind Will Johnson. Kenneth Grant, the interior defensive line from Michigan, is right there as well. And I also have to mention Malachi Starks because I just think he's going to be an absolute star in the NFL. But the truth is, I wouldn't force a safety pick in the draft. I know it's a need, but if you look at some of these positions, safety was addressed to a degree. Yeah, not to my liking. They didn't get that lead dude out there. They signed 2 depth guys, in Iafatu Melifonwu and Ashton Davis, that will compete with a rookie they take in the first 4 rounds and Patrick Mahomes coming back. But that is probably why I wouldn't force a safety in the first 2 rounds if you do not think the best player on the board is one of those safeties. Because there are some solid free agents available that Miami could go out and scoop up. Justin Simmons is still there. Julian Blackmon, a couple veterans in Marcus Williams and Jordan Whitehead. Like, I'm not going to talk about these guys in depth right now in this video, but if the Dolphins ended up going corner, offensive line, defensive line in the first 3 picks, didn't really draft a high-end safety, and came out of the draft with a 5th-round pick at safety and the guys they already signed for agency, and we're like, hey, we got some cap space, got $8-9 million to burn. Why not go out and sign one of these guys on a cheap 1-year deal? I'd be all in on that to provide leadership and more competition to the safety room like you saw last year what they did with Marcus May. All right, out of those 4 safeties, I know we didn't talk about them as players, but off first glance, which one would you sign? Simmons, Julian Blackmon, Whitehead, Marcus Williams, or is there another one out there? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. And I'm just going to hammer this point home again. If you don't love a safety in the first round at 13 or on day 2 of the draft at pick 48 or 98, go somewhere else and then sign one of them. Because those 4 safeties are adequate enough to be starters and would be solid additions to a room to create that trio and 4 group of safety of McMorris, Melifonwu, Davis, and whoever that signing is. So to me, that's the best way to go about there. Now, if a player fell in your lap, say the Dolphins go corner at 13 or defensive line, and like a Malachi Starks or a Nick Emenwari somehow were there at 48, well, yeah, go best player available and take one of those guys. Now, I think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't force a safety in the first 50 picks, whether it's at 13 or 48, because you do have cap space. Now, you have to allot some of that cap space to sign your NFL draft class, which will take about $8 to $12 million away, but you can also free up some cap space with cutting a player like Jake Bailey after you sign Ryan Stonehouse and create $8 to $12 million to be used in free agency with a signing, whether you want to go offensive line or in the secondary. Either way, I do anticipate Miami utilizing this cap space in some degree with free agents after the NFL draft. And I will continue to break down more when it comes to the Dolphins over on my Twitter. At Nic_Rohloff is my handle. Go give me a follow right now if you want to stay up to date with everything surrounding the Dolphins, draft visits, news, and more. Go give me a follow. All right, folks. All right, folks, we've got one more segment to go. One more segment to go. We've done a lot of draft talk here, but it's time to get into my latest and most recent Dolphins mock draft 11.0, and it features a blockbuster trade. Excuse me. Mark Smith says, I still like trading back and grabbing Gray Zabel if someone doesn't reach for him. It's an intriguing hypothetical you just threw out there. And I say it's intriguing because I may or may not have done that exact thing in this mock draft. But hit that like button and we'll get our mock draft going. Mock draft 11.0. I think we just picked up 5 or 6 likes in between segments. So, you know what? We've already been live for an hour and 10 minutes. Let's dive right into my next mock draft. Mock draft 11.0. We are officially under 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. There's only 2 more mocks coming. One next week and then my final mock draft right before that April 24th date. Now, this one features a blockbuster trade. Yeah. It'll be a very fun mock draft to explore here. But before we get into that, hit that sub button. I've been tasked, I don't want to say it too loud because if Tyler Jones can hear me, to track down and pass the Chiefs report in subscribers. We're under 2,000 away from doing that. The Chiefs stink. They do, maybe on the football field, but we're a better channel here at Dolphins Today. And I want to pass them. So hit that sub button. We'll be live for every day of the Dolphins draft and the NFL draft and having you covered with every pick. So hit that sub button. Let's also catch the Chiefs report on our sub counter. All right, we're not even going to get to the first pick before we make the blockbuster trade, folks. Not going to. Why am I trading back? We'll tell you why here in a second. But the Steelers jump up from number 21 to number 13. The Dolphins net a 2026 second-round pick, so they get one next year, plus a third-round pick this year, which is number 83 overall. Pittsburgh does not have a second-round pick in this year's draft, so that is something Miami could not acquire if they did a deal with Pittsburgh. But why would the Steelers make this trade to move up from 21-13? Well, in this simulator, Jahdae Sanders fell to 13 overall. And I put out a video a couple days ago on the channel earlier this week saying that Sanders may fall to Miami at pick number 13. It's possible if the Saints don't pick him at 9 or the Raiders don't pick him at 6. And if that's the case, the best case scenario, in my opinion, for the Dolphins might be trading back with a team that wants to move up to take Jahdae. And then you take a best player available at corner, defensive line, or offensive line in the early 20s or late teens. And you acquire more draft capital to add to this roster. So to me, Dolphins fans should be hoping and praying Jahdae falls to pick 13 so Miami could hopefully trade back and acquire more draft capital. So we moved back in this blockbuster trade to pick number 21, and we're going offensive line. We're going North Dakota State offensive lineman Gray Zabel. This is a very intriguing player here where I liked a lot in the pre-draft process. I wanted him to be someone the Dolphins picked at number 48. Bad news is that was about 2.5 months ago, and the rest of the world caught on, and Zabel is now going in the first round of every single mock draft. And I like him in the early to mid-20s here. So with this trade back, they fall to 21 and they take Zabel. I wouldn't take him at 13 by any stretch of the imagination. And I think it might even be a reach at like 16, 17, or 18. But you're at 21. That's where we start to talk about Zabel here in the sweet spot. He was absolutely awesome for North Dakota State last season, just being a dominant force and a darling of PFF last year, ranking at the top of the college level in every single statistic, overall grade, pass block, run block. He did not give up a lot in terms of his pass blocking. Only 1 sack, 2 QB hits, 4 hurries. He was penalized a little bit, but nothing out of the extraordinary. So to me, I am a big fan of potentially adding Gray Zabel to this offensive line. He's athletic. He fits in the Dolphins system. If the Dolphins traded back from 13 to in the 20s, yeah, I would absolutely be in on taking Gray Zabel. So, knowing that the Dolphins traded back from 13, I took Gray Zabel at 21 and passed on Jahdae Sanders. Would you want to do that? Type Y for yes or type N for no. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. All right, so we move over to pick number 48 here, where I've got the Dolphins taking a corner from Kentucky, Maxwell Harrison. The corner that I think is going to be a very intriguing player at the next level. Why? Because he's an absolute athletic freak. A little bit undersized for the position, similar to Jahdae Barron, who we talk about a little bit. Harrison is actually slightly bigger than Barron in terms of his height, but he is a little bit too thin for my liking, which is a concern, which is probably why he's not going in the first round, weighing only at 183 pounds, but he makes up for it for being the most explosive corner in this draft. Yeah, 4.28, ranking 9.99. His explosion rate was elite as well, with his vertical and broad jump, both ranking in the low 9.3s on the RAS for an overall 9.63 score. He is the most athletic corner in this draft class. Now, you are concerned by his slight frame, only weighing 180 pounds, and that could relate to the injury history he has already had at the college level. He only played in 7 games last season. Now, in those 7 games, he was pretty solid in coverage, allowing just over a 50% completion percentage, a QB rating of 78.2. He took away a play, an interception, 5 PBUs, had 0 touchdowns on him as well for the Wildcats in the SEC. There is a concern for me when it comes to his injury history and his ability to play man coverage at the next level, but he's an athletic freak. He would fit very well in a zone scheme. The thing is with Hairston, I don't think he makes it to 48. I laid a lot of concerns out there for the Kentucky corner due to his size and due to his frame. But because of how much of an athlete he is, and you see that athleticism play on tape quite a bit for Kentucky, I think he goes in the first round. And if he doesn't, probably within the first 4 or 5 picks of the second round. And you might see teams trading up in between round 1 and round 2 when you have a full 24 hours in between those picks to trade up and get him. In this mock draft, he fell. I took him. Don't know if that's going to ultimately happen. All right, Jordan Phillips is the pick here with the Steelers selection at 83, the pick we got by trading back. I take a defensive lineman from Maryland in Jordan Phillips. And Phillips is an intriguing player here. He is not someone that is going to be a dominant pass rusher at the next level. And I don't think you saw that whatsoever in the Big Ten when he was playing for the Maryland Terrapins. But he is a very strong player. He's got a great base. He's got a great frame to him where offensive linemen are going to have a hard time moving him off of his spot. And I think he is a very good complementary piece on the defensive line. I don't think he could headline a room, but as a potential defensive lineman on the interior number 2 next to Zach Sealer, I can see that working out to a very solid degree. Like I said, not going to make headwaves getting after the passer or the quarterback, but can stop the run and force a couple offensive linemen to get attached to him due to his ability to just not be moved. Phillips is an intriguing player on day 2. All right, the 98th pick, the comp pick Miami got for Robert Hunt leaving in free agency last year. I'm going safety here. Andrew Makuba, the DB from Texas, not Jahdae Barron, but the other safety that's been linked to Miami. And I love Makuba. I've talked to him quite a bit. He showcases a very good blend of physicality, of speed, and ability to make plays in the run game, but also take the ball away as a free roaming safety. I think he can play in the box. I know he's a little bit undersized, but I can never get that head out of my mind when he laid out that Georgia quarterback in the SEC championship game. I just can't do it. I think Makuba's got a good head on his shoulders. I think he would fit well. You get him into this room with McMorris, Melifanu, and Davis, and I'd be very intrigued with those 4 safeties. If Makuba's there in the 3rd round, I'll take him in a heartbeat. All right, moving over to the 4th round where Miami has 2 selections. I'm going Anis Peeblace, the defensive lineman from Virginia Tech, at pick number 116. This is a very fascinating player that I'm going to talk more about here in just a second. But we are sponsored by Game Time, the ticketing partner here at Dolphins Today. And I know we're a while from Dolphins football being back, so you can't get any tickets to go to their games. And we don't even know the schedule yet. But you can go to MLB games. You can go to concerts, comedy shows. You can go to other sporting events in your local area as well. They have the best ability to get last-minute tickets, especially when it comes to baseball. It's so fast and easy. Prices on Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have an ability to save up to 60% off when buying last-minute tickets. Game Time Picks is another feature that make last-minute ticket buying easier than ever as well, as they quickly highlight the best deals in the stadium. Get a full panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy so you know exactly where you're sitting. Whether you want to go to a sporting event or a concert in Miami, if you're in the local area, Chris Brown, Lady Gaga, and others coming to whether it's Home Depot or Hard Rock this summer, take advantage, get Game Time, and go to some fun event. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now, when you talk about people as a defensive line prospect for Miami, this is what you would get if you took him in the middle rounds. He is an undersized defensive lineman who has great explosiveness and quickness that could allow him to be a difference maker. I say similar to Willie Lampkin. And yes, Willie Lampkin is an offensive lineman from North Carolina. But the truth is this. Both of them should not be playing the position they do. But they are such good athletes, such fierce and physical competitors, and productive players that I am willing to take the swing on the productivity and the mindset over the traits and sizes of them. Same thing with Lampkin could be said here for the Virginia Tech defensive lineman. Because when you look at him, for a D lineman, 6 foot, 282, yeah, that's as bad as it gets. But you see his 40-yard dash ranking very, very high for someone of his size. He's got a good vertical and a solid broad jump, which to me showcases that he's got a good first quick step off of the line of scrimmage. And his shuttle wasn't as bad either. I think this is an intriguing day 3 option for the Miami Dolphins. And when you just look at what he did for Virginia Tech in the ACC last season, he had a 17.8% pass rush win rate. Was just dominating for that Virginia Tech defense. So to me, I'm willing to take the gamble on a second defensive lineman in this draft class that's got some solid foot speed, solid explosiveness, production at the college level. Just because he's a little bit undersized, he's going to fall down boards, fine by me. I'll take the shot. All right, we're going to stay in the ACC with a cornerback, a player that I have done on a Dolphins mock draft in the past, probably about 5 mock drafts ago. Elijah Huzzie, the defensive back from North Carolina, round 4, pick number 135. And Huzzie's an intriguing player here because he's a versatile piece that you can move around your defense. Over his 3 years of starting for the Tar Heels, a defense that was not very good, by the way, he played outside corner in 2022. Then he moved into the slot and played nickel in 2023 before moving back to the outside and playing for this Tar Heel defense in 2024. But he was not viewed as someone that was thought of as a good NFL type of corner until after the college season actually ended. And it has nothing to do with him performing well at the Combine or his pro day. It's actually with him performing well at the East-West Shrine Bowl. He was one of the best players there on the defensive side of the football, rising from a 7th-round undrafted free agent type of guy to a 5th-round, 4th-round type of selection. I know we took Hairston earlier in this pick, but I wouldn't hate drafting 2 corners since you do have so many draft selections in this April's draft. I like Huzzie. He's a dog. He's a competitor. He's versatile. I'll take the shot, especially with Kader Kohu only being on a 1-year deal. He's someone that I would label as a mid-round sleeper for the Dolphins, or just in general. Pat Bryant, the wide receiver from Illinois, is another one of my favorites. I don't have him going in this mock draft, but I do like him quite a bit. Who is your favorite mid-round sleeper? Not for the Dolphins, but just in general. Put on your scouting hat in the comments. All right, moving over to round 5, I'm going to go with a linebacker from Penn State, Kobe King, a player that I know a lot of people in the comment section are going to be excited that I mocked here to Miami at pick number 150. He is a physical, downhill linebacker who is all over the place. He flourishes in stopping the run. If you see a gap open up on that offensive line in the run game, Kobe King will come full speed downhill and fill that gap instantly. He's also a good pass rushing linebacker, having 3 sacks last season for the Nittany Lions defense. 2 words when it comes to him: downhill, physical. Something that Miami might be able to use more of on their defense. And I know I like their linebacker room right now of Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dodson, Willie Gay, and, I'm spacing. I'm going to lose my mind not being able to figure out why I can't think about the other backup linebacker. KJ Brett. There we go. But Channing Tindall, who's on the last year of his rookie contract, that 5th linebacker. Is he a lock to make the team? Absolutely not. I could see Kobe King coming in and playing well if they drafted him in the middle rounds and taking over that 5th linebacker spot or being a special teams guy. Our second 5th round pick, Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback from Oregon, here at number 155. There has been a lot of comparisons between him and Tua. I think it's kind of lazy because they're just both left-handed and a little bit of an undersized, but he is a very accurate thrower of the football, completing 72.9% of his passes last year. Now, a lot of that came because Oregon runs a bubble screen, a lot of yards after the catch for the Ducks last season, a lot of RPOs for Dillon Gabriel, and that Duck offense as well, but he puts the ball in his receiver's hands in stride. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot, and I do like him as a QB3. I'm being honest. I do. I think that putting him behind Zach Wilson and Tua as that developmental third guy could be a good thing. And if he is your long-term backup potentially for Tua Tagovailoa, that's a good thing because as silly as it sounds, the cadence, the offensive line is structured differently for left-handed quarterbacks to right-handed quarterbacks. So if your backup QB had the same type of kind of hand placement, right? Left-handed for a left-handed QB, you don't have to change anything. So I do think it makes a lot of sense for Miami to be interested in Dillon Gabriel in round 3. All right, Dolphins still have 3 7th-round picks. We'll reveal them here all at the same time. Raheem Sanders, the running back from South Carolina here at pick number 224. Luke Lachey, the tight end from Iowa at 231. And then Garrett Dellinger, the interior offensive lineman from LSU here at 253. I've talked about Sanders in the past, a physical downhill running back that could be your short yardage guy in the future after Alexander Madison's one-year contract runs through. I actually really like the idea of bringing in Lachey in the 7th round out of Iowa. I think he's got some good traits to him that can make him a valued member of this Dolphins tight end room that's headlined by Jonnu Smith, Julian Hill, and Pharaoh Brown. And then Dellinger, a SEC interior offensive lineman. I'll take the shot on him here as a depth piece. All right, you saw it. We actually had 11 picks in this draft because we traded back and picked up an extra 3rd rounder. Grade Roley's mock draft. You could flame me. You can praise me. Just let me know your thoughts on this mock draft 11.0. Like I said, I got 2 more mocks coming, one next week and then one the week before or just a couple days before the NFL draft. But let me know how 11.0 went. The truth is, and the final word on this mock draft, if Will Johnson's on the board at 13, I'm taking him. Now, in this mock draft, he wasn't, and I've taken Will Johnson in a couple mock drafts over the 10 that we did prior to this one. So I wanted to switch things up and do a trade down and take an offensive lineman, which is probably where I actually want to go with this. If Will Johnson isn't on the board at 13 and Jahdae Sanders is, I would love to trade back and go with a defensive lineman, offensive lineman, or a safety in the early 20s if possible and acquire more draft capital on day 2 or in the future. Makes a lot of sense for me, but even if Jahdae Sanders is on the board at 13, if Will Johnson's on the board with him, I'm going to have a hard time not trying to scream and shout for the pick to be Will Johnson. And you will see me scream and shout for the Dolphins draft pick on draft night, April 24th, because we will be live for all 3 days that the NFL draft has, breaking down every pick the Dolphins have. So hit that sub button and join us because we'll also have you covered for the final week and a half leading up to the NFL draft soon. All right, that does it for the mock draft. That does it for the live show. Let's see what people are saying about that mock draft I just did. Robert saying B, B plus from Ty Man, B from Kenneth, B plus from Ryan, B from Elwood. Tell you what, Justin, this is the highest consensus grade I've ever had on a mock draft live. Yeah, like last time I got an above average grade, a couple A's in there, and I didn't get any A's here out of the first 5 grades, but all of them being B or B plus, I'm taking it. Yeah, and some people might wonder if the Steelers would even ever think about doing that trade. Well, they're having a top 30 visit with Jahdae Sanders, and if Aaron Rodgers doesn't make a decision or makes a decision that the Steelers don't like, well, then they will be in the market for a rookie quarterback, and they will probably trade up or just sit at 21 and draft Jahdae if he slides, hopefully to that point in their case, or Jackson Dart or Jalen Murrow or something like that. I would agree with that. All right, we appreciate everyone who's tuned in on today's live show. If a super chat comes in, we'll answer and stay live. If not, we're going to sign off here and move on with the rest of our week. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and, well, we'll see where this goes. All right, doesn't seem like we're going to get a mailbag. It is what it is, but that's fine. Appreciate everyone who tuned in on today's live show. We're going to sign off here. We'll see you live again next week. We will have videos in between. Peace out, folks. See you next week.